All right, that seems like about 10 after. It's not the most comfortable day to lecture for 2 lectures. I can't sleep up here. I know that'll happen to some of you out there by the time this place warms up. Today we're going to shift into talking about how to value the environment. It'll take us 2 to 3 lectures, depending on how many stories I tell and how much you interrupt. And it's okay either way. I don't feel like it. We must rush. I put back up the syllabus because I'm still pretty much on target. This I opened for you. These things will open. This is going to get covered down below again. These 2 might interest you. If they don't, I will say something about them later, right? But if you're actually interested in pollution and how it's cleaned up and what these agencies really look like, I would go there and browse. It's worth it. This link works. I still think this is an excellent introduction to the issues of climate change, even though it's now several years old. Alternatively, you can go find the IPCC reports, but you'll find those are much harder reading than this is. This is not picking up well, is it? Is that any better? No, I have to turn like this. I'm going to turn this up a little. No, it already is. All right. So let's play with it a little more. Maybe that's a little better. All right. Well, we did that. I haven't checked that out, but probably the largest remaining welfare program in the United States is food stamps, and that's now called SNAP. And we could have done a very hard exercise on that. If we have a lot of time at the end, maybe we will. But again, that might be interesting to you. Been there. We're down to revealed preference today. It's time for you to go read this classic article. And luckily, one of our TAs from long ago, now professor in Melbourne, wrote up a set of notes on it. You might want to read Emma's notes along with the article or before it. This is essentially plain English, but remarkably hard for being that. The TAs will talk about this. Do you have an idea of this week, next week? Friday and Wednesday. So starting tomorrow. So if you're in a Friday section, go spend 20 minutes and make the time a lot more rewarding for the GSI, maybe you. And then we're down to this problem set. We'll get within a week of it. I'll make sure you know everything you need to know. So that's where we stand. Today, I get to tell some stories, and we get to talk about revealed preference. 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 5. There we go, 5. So economists seriously got into the business of finding the value of the environment with this law case done by Ted McConnell. It's not that we hadn't been interested before, but this was the first time for us there was real money on the table. What had happened was that electrical parts manufacturers had discharged PCBs into New Bedford Harbor from around the 40s to, it says, the 70s, but at some point they stopped. This is an absolutely worldwide phenomenon. So I spend time in Sweden, and all the way up near the Arctic Circle, there's a town called Umeå with a river that's also called Umeå, or the Umeälven, and there was an old paper mill, big paper mill by the river, and right into the delta of this river, the paper mill discharged a vast amount of PCBs. And I don't care where you go in the world, if you find something that was industrial, 40s, 50s, you will find the chemical discharge. Why? Well, nobody really knew this stuff was bad for you, quite frankly. And so people just took stuff they didn't want, and they dropped it in the water because it's a convenient way to get rid of it. Others took stuff they didn't want, they put it in barrels, and they buried it. Love Canal in upstate New York, if you know your environmental history, or if you look in the text. Love Canal is an example of where the Hooker Chemical Company had these chemicals, and they wanted to get rid of them, and the way you got rid of them is you got a steel oil drum, you put them in the oil drum, you banged it shut, and you buried it 20 feet down. Right? So that was done everywhere. Don't care where you go, you will find it. Well, the contamination makes it so that you don't want to eat the fish, and really, you don't really want to go in the water and stir up the sediment and get the stuff in you and on you. One of the locations here apparently had the largest concentration ever discovered of PCBs. So that's the pollution problem. The problem that Ted McConnell faced is because of CERCLA. And again, if you go look in the text, the story of Love Canal is reasonably well told. If you don't want to do that, try Googling Love Canal. That will bring it up too. After Love Canal, the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, known as either CERCLA or more commonly as Superfund, was passed. And the idea in CERCLA was actually to clean up these sites, these old industrial sites. That's what people had in mind. The way it was supposed to work was the Superfund would be funded to begin with by a tax on the chemical industry. And then when they got enough money, which happened, they would take that money and they would clean up industrial sites, and they'd charge the people who were responsible for the cleanup. And that was totally reasonable. The way it plays out is very, very different from that. The way it plays out has to do with potentially responsible parties. It's a strange idea. So somebody goes and, if I just push this over, we'll be done with this one too. I want to get a chair. There, thank you. You want to explain to me how somebody in a wheelchair is going to move to this and get behind it? Some things just amaze me. So the idea of a potentially responsible party is anyone who had a hand in the pollution. But it gets defined ridiculously broadly. For instance, I have a boat repairing shop in Long Island City, New York. I employ probably 2 people, and I'm along the harbor. And what do? I take boats out of the water, I scrape off the bottoms of them, and I paint it with copper anti-fouling paint, because that's what people did. And guess what? I get all this gunk off the boats, and I have the old pieces of the cans that are left over, and I take them and I bury them a couple of feet down. And what else am I going to do with them? All right, I am now the one who actually did the deed, right? I put the nasty stuff out in the environment, and it's going to leak out of those cans forever and kill marine organisms when it does. Yeah. So the problem that comes up is I then sell the land to one of you who builds a perfectly nice furniture factory where this boatyard used to be. And you have no idea about the toxics. Why? Because I sold it to you in 1955 or something like that. Who knew? Then I go off and die. So you can't come after me because, well, I'm dead. You can't go after dead people because they won't show up in court. If you get a judgment against them, they won't pay. So that's pointless. But guess what? You bought this property, and the stuff is leaking to the environment while you own it. So you are a potential liable party, and you can be made to clean it up. All right, you sell your furniture factory to somebody else who goes in and starts making software or movies or whatever they're making these days in Long Island City, which is more like that than furniture. And they don't know any more about this than you knew about this. And they too became potentially responsible parties. Eventually, cans are lighter than ground, as are barrels full of chemical waste, and they float. So, if you drop something in water, it floats to the top because it's less density. Well, it happens in ground too. It floats. Barrels float. So eventually, the barrels that you put down 30 feet or 20 feet or whatever, 30 feet in Love Canal, work their way to the surface, and they break up because steel doesn't last forever. And now the toxins are all over the place, and the ornamentals you planted outside of your lovely new whatever go, and they die. And you wonder, how come my plants died? And then eventually you realize, oh no, there was toxic waste. Now you have a legal responsibility. The minute you know there's toxic waste being released to the environment, you have to pick up the phone and call the US EPA. You don't do that, you create a crime. You pick up the phone and say, I don't like this, but geez. And they say, okay. And they come out. And they really do come out. And now they say to you, well, you're a potentially responsible party. Do you want to clean this up or do you want us to clean it up? You quickly realize that you can clean it up for probably a tenth the cost that they're going to charge you. And so having them clean it up is the wrong idea, but you knew who you bought it from, and maybe that person's still alive, maybe it's a corporation and they're still in existence. And so you start suing every other potentially responsible party. Why? Because you wanted to share in this lovely contribution. And then everyone ends up suing everybody. So from a lawyer's point of view, you could not have written a nicer law. It is a guaranteed full employment act for environmental lawyers because everyone's going to try to get away from it. The one on the Umealvin, which they decided to just leave the sediments buried, which environmentally may be a perfectly fine answer, but not an answer that we choose in the U.S. But they were figuring it was $40–50 million to dig the sediments out of the thing. This one that I have here is $110 million, of which $90 million was cleaning it up. They're not trivial amounts of money. So everybody's trying to make the dime land on the other guy. And so the litigation will go on for a very, very long time. So that's what it actually caused, endless litigation, and not necessarily cleanup. So we still have a giant backlog of places that have to be cleaned up. It's very hard to get people to pay for them because often the amounts of money concerned are enormous compared to the resources of the people that you have identified as potentially responsible. I'll just give an example I was involved in. It's a little different. Women who had too many spontaneous abortions were given diethylstilbestrol in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. At some point it was known that it was a really stupid thing to do, like about 1956, but they kept on doing it. And it caused cancer in the daughters, misshapen uteruses in the daughters leading to premature birth. It was a basic horror show, okay? And who was responsible? Well, on the order of 60 different drug companies showed up in court because they were sued. They were all pointing the fingers at each other. And as near as anyone could tell, one of the major players was a firm that worked out of its garage in, I believe, Flushing, New York. And they had the receipts of how much DES these guys bought. These guys were buying hundreds of pounds of the stuff, and they weren't doing a veterinary business. So they probably were distributing it in the pharmaceutical business, like I said they were. Well, they were bankrupt. They've been bankrupt for decades. Their firm had, for strange reasons, been bought by another firm, which was bought by another firm, which was a railroad company that went bankrupt. There's no money there, right? So in that case, the plaintiffs didn't collect very much because they're trying to collect from someone who had no money. CERCLA makes it different. CERCLA says you can collect from any of the potential liables. So if the US EPA goes after 5 potential liables, one of them has money and 4 of them are broke, and 4 of them did most of the damage, and one of them was just standing there and got caught in the headlights, they can get all the money out of the one, even if that one is the least culpable. So CERCLA is draconian, and that's why it's not love. It also didn't clean all the stuff up, and that's a separate problem. If you wanted to clean it up, if you asked me today, how would you clean it up? I would give a very different answer from when that was done. When that was done, I would have said the polluter pays principle. You've got to stick it to the polluters because that way they'll know they have to pay, and that way they'll take care. That's what I would have told you if you asked me in 1976, the first time I came to Cal, the lecture. If you asked me today, I would have said, why don't you make a list of what this costs? How much of a tax would this cost on chemical companies plus people who have industrial property? How much would we have to charge them each before you have the whole thing cleaned up in 20 years? And if you went off and did that calculation, it would be some very reasonable amounts of money if you spread it out. So if your desire was, we're going to get incentives right and we're going to punish these guys, CERCLA is where you want to go. If you're asking me, having seen the movie already, was it a good movie? No, actually it turned out not to be a good movie. If I had to do this again, I would find a way in which it actually got cleaned up rather than find a way in which people got punished. But then you have to do something like this going forwards. I mean, after people know they're not supposed to do it, if they do it, you need to do all kinds of really nasty things to them, right? So someone who buries a barrel of toxic waste today is going to violate a whole bunch of other federal laws. The least of their problems is going to be CERCLA. Right? They're going to have committed a criminal act, whereas these guys are just being taken for their money. So that's my advice when you come into the policymaking realm is going forwards, yeah, nasty things happen to you if you do it. But going backwards, you can't go backwards and find out who did something in 1950, try to get them to pay for it. You're crazy. So that's my comments on that. Now, the part that's the Full Employment Act for economists is here. This is full employment for environmental scientists. We already talked about litigation that's here. This is the Full Employment Act for lawyers. You're going to be an environmental lawyer. This is for you. You're going to be an environmental scientist. Then an awful lot of the work at the kind of bachelor's and master's level is remediation. And so this is your Full Employment Act right here. And if you're an economist, it's this one. When you do one of these things, like you spill oil from the Exxon Valdez, then you created natural resource damages, but nobody agrees how big those damages are. And these here attorneys hire us economists. And we, as well as some environmental scientists, quantify in money terms what the damages are. And so that's our Full Employment Act, and we like it. Of course, the rest of the lecture is mostly about this piece. It's not about the $90 million that was spent to clean up the bay. It's about the $20 million that we extracted from them because of lost fishing and beach recreation, because that's our part of the deal. So here's the numbers. Oh, we got 20 million bucks, 20.2 million bucks. That's not bad for a day's work or a month's work or whatever it was. That's my introduction. Now we got to talk about types of values and types of ways of finding those values. There's two basic types of value. Use values or passive values, which I can also call non-use values. Pick either term here you like, I don't care. Use values you know all about. This is candy bar. I ate the candy bar. That's use value. I go fishing. It's use. You see me do something. I go beach visiting. So if I do stuff, then you can find a way to find my demand curve for that stuff. Today we talk about travel cost. You look at people who are close to the beach and people who are far away from the beach. What's the difference to them in the price of beach visiting? Their travel time. So then I have different visitors that face different prices, and surely I can maneuver that to get a demand curve that I can, and then I can take the area under my demand curve, the willingness to pay, right, and all that good stuff that we talked about. So if I can see you doing something, then I can find some way to value it from observation. So there's use values. Passive values. This is the wolves. How many of you like there being wolves in Yellowstone? How many of you, hands are up, leave your hands up for a second. How many of you actually visited the wolves? Okay, so half, less than half of us have visited the wolves in Yellowstone. So if you observe what we do, you're not going to be able to find out what those people who are sitting here and they love their wolves, but they don't go visit them. You can't figure out how they value them. They didn't visit them. They didn't do anything with them. They just sat in their armchair, as John Curtillo would have said, and enjoyed their wolves. Right? So these people surely have passive values. And the problem with having passive use is I can't infer your value from your usage. There's no way to do it. So that's the basic dichotomy of types of goods. Those that have use value, those that have non-use value. And we found one that's in the middle. Turns out our wolves are in the middle. Now, we have two ways of getting at what the value is of some environmental service. One way is revealed preference, and that's what we're going to talk about. I gave you a quick gloss on travel cost. Talk about this and that within the next 2 hours. Stated preference is much easier. I take a random sample of people. I take my microphone off and ask, how much would you be willing to pay to save the wolves in Yellowstone? $5. $10. Okay, so you can get a whole bunch of answers when you do that, and you will. And in essence, what you're going to do is you're going to take a representative sample of people. You're going to ask them a question like that, and you're going to find out what the values are from their stated answers. Now, who really loves wolves? Okay, you really love wolves. How much is it going to cost you to give a big answer? How much are you willing to pay? $25 million. She's willing to pay $25 million. Is she broke? Is she out on the street without food? Have there been consequences to her for this ludicrous answer? And that's the problem you're going to try to get around whenever you do a stated preference, is the person thinks to themselves, if I give a really big answer here, then they're going to think the wolves are really worthwhile, and then they're going to save the wolves, which is what I want. Right? And we think we can get around it, and sometimes we can show you that for some things are a little less charged, like hunting permits. If we do this study both ways, we'll get the same answer. So I wouldn't say this is hopeless, but I would say this has got problems. We could just think about that commonly. Did you ever know of an election where the pollsters got it wrong? Did that ever happen? Is there a famous American headline like that? What? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You almost got it. You got almost the right one. Yeah, there's a big headline that says Dewey beats Truman, and there's Harry S. It stands for nothing Truman, holding the headline, grinning from here to here. All right, well, how do you do this? You ask me. Do you know what they did wrong in that one? They did a telephone survey. Everyone didn't have telephones. So it turned out the people who had telephones were basically more on the Dewey side, Republican. People who didn't have telephones were wildly for Harry Truman. And so Harry Truman won. I got it wrong. And so this thing of going around asking people has got its problems. You do get it wrong sometimes. So we have stated preference. And that relates to what political scientists do. They ask you who you're going to vote for. If the election were held today, would you vote for Mrs. Clinton or who's the leader on the other side these days? Rand Paul. And that's roughly what they ask people, and that's what you see in the newspaper. And they're much better about a representative sample. Much better than they were in 1950. So now let's look at yet another way of cutting down the goods in the world. Things that are sold in markets. Hey, that's really easy, right? We've done that. Electricity. We go to the electric company if they're willing to talk to us, and we get the data on what people used as what the prices were, and through some statistical methods that you learn about 2 classes from now, you get a demand curve like the one in the book that I put on the board. And then you can find total willingness to pay, and you can also find out if I made a little more electricity, how much would price go down, and how much would willingness to pay go up, right? You can do all that stuff. So the marketed good, you have price and quantity. There's no point in worrying about methods to value marketed goods. What about these non-marketed goods? Well, outdoor recreation is not marketed. Most of the price you pay is not something we record. So our challenge is to measure these non-marketed goods, and some of them, like outdoor recreation, have use values. So we're going to be able to observe something and work from there. Some of them